Welcome back to Let's Talk UCA, the podcast where we connect, collaborate, and communicate with chiropractors from around the globe. I'm Holly, and this is part 2 of the conversation with Mark Postles and Kerry Sissins. In this episode, Mark shares his perspective on the evolution of chiropractic, the importance of the innate model, and the future of the profession in the age of AI and research. We discuss the power of human connection in care, bridging the gap between science and philosophy, and the role organisations like the UCA play in shaping the profession's future and legacy.
So here's another one I'd like to ask. How would you, I'm intrigued on this one, how would you define legacy? And what would, I guess based on that, what would you like your professional and personal legacy to be?
It's a weird one, isn't it? Legacy. I mean, it's nothing that it's a result. It's like footprints in the sand. We leave a legacy, which is to some degree, it's a track on where we've been and what we've been up to and how those footprints have been taken on board. And so probably, there's like personal legacy, would be where maybe I suppose the way it affects people or affects other matter, other forms of matter, be it planting a tree or having a child come through us, having practice members be part of our tribe for a nanosecond or a lifetime or multi-generations. There's an imprint that's left behind every one of us. Like, and this is interesting actually about Africa. We take groups of our clients to different parts of the world and do different things, and then pick it apart in terms of what's the context and how does this relate to what we do as chiros or who we are as chiros. But out of that primordial soup of millions of years, billions of years ago, came life, and the African continent was actually, the mother to Australia, to Antarctica, to India, to South America. I mean, they all split off from it. And, it's deemed to be probably the epicenter of biped humans, Homo erectus, and that was, 3 million years ago or so. And the exposure to these prehistoric representations of life form in animals, which, I think probably would say a rhinoceros or an elephant or even a zebra, but, big cats and stuff. But, there's sort of an element there that's within us that is still within us. The genetic coding of human beings has come down from there. So, it's like, there's a memory of who we are and what we've been a part of, that transcends time because of the legacy that's built within it. So we're actually a living legacy of the history of mankind. We're recapitulating, if you like, the history of mankind. You can see that through gestation and through early childhood development and so forth. We go through the stages of development from unicellular to this multicellular thing that we are now. So, there's we have it all within us. I think this is, a key element to this is that the history of mankind is within us, every single one of us on this planet. And so, it's sort of, when you go back to the home of that, and this is just my experience and many of our experiences in this past couple of weeks, and in chiros in the wild, is like you go back to that and it's there, it's raw. It's like, I've been here before, sort of things. Yeah, it was quite fascinating. Anyway, the point being is that is that's a legacy that you cannot not have a legacy. You know? The
Your
question is
timeline, I suppose, is my simple way of looking at it. You're part of that timeline that's in perpetuity, really, isn't it?
yes, yeah. So our grandparents and great grandparents and great great grandparents and so forth, you know, they laid down certain memories that were passed on, that are passed on to us. So I think, you know, to be purposeful about that then, like, okay, so everything we do, you know, is recorded and it's part of that process. But then we also look at, well, what's our professional legacy? And that's where we can define things more. So that, you know, for me, it was like, okay, I want chiropractic to be institutionalized within the academic arena, which means that we want to have an integration of the chiropractic values, the right brain essence of chiropractic within the sciences. You know, it's not philosophy or science. It's philosophy and science. It's the philosophy of science and the scientific expression of philosophy. So, you know, there's an integration there. So, you know, having that then gives us our reference points in terms of our three parts, our techniques and our applications, and then brings in a much more refined four political expression, which is from love, it's from consideration, it's from connection, it's from, you know, it's from ideation, and it's also from cerebral um, um, computation. You know, so it's not sort of a surface thing. It's quite deep because it's integrated. So I think, you know, that sort of legacy will be can be long standing. You know, it can be wiped away too, and it's constant vigilance. And this we have to, you know, that's the price of freedom. You know, it is about making sure that we don't let this get messed up. You know, I know, you know, Walt Disney was quoted as saying, you know, when he was looking at Disney World in Florida, it was a swamp, and he took his head people down to that swamp and looked each one of them in the eye, went around them and said, I want you to promise that you're not going to let this vision, which he had mapped out for this swamp in Orlando, to get messed up. You know, I want you to guarantee me that you are going to carry this vision. And, you know, that was a very solemn promise for those people to create the Disney and perpetuate the Disney thing, you know, and I think it's probably a more tangible thing that we could have around that. But the colleges are the same, you know, the institutions that we build will change form over time. And this is something we're being faced with at the moment with the ascent of AI, is going to be, well, what will education look like in the next couple of years, not the next, you know, millennia. So how are we going to work with that? But if we get I think, you know, if we have the legacy built into it, and it's not about creating it for a legacy's sake, it's creating it for the passion that we are. It's an artistic expression, but it gets encoded that is in perpetuity. Actually, it gives future generations an opportunity to engage in it and learn from it. So, you know, just as D-Day laid down for us in chiropractic, you know, there's many forms of bone setting and stuff that took place over many generations and you know, thousands of years. So chiropractic is really not new when it comes to that. It was just put into a different wrapper. So, you know, it's a pretty useful thing.
You bring up an interesting point, actually, that I was wanting to touch on about AI, because my question to you is how you feel that will it influence what we do, how we do it? Do you see a world where AI will usurp a lot of the hands-on stuff that we do and make us slightly redundant?
Yep.
Do you?
Yep. Already.
That intrigues me, because I wasn't expecting that answer. Explain.
Me neither. And Mark, when you say already, what are you referring to now? I'm really curious.
Okay. So, I mean, it can replace hands-on skills. Yeah, I guarantee. Like, you know, I can see that it won't be that long before you walk into a booth when people understand, brain, spine, nervous system function, they've got their aura rings on, they know, all the wearables and they know what's going on with their physiology. That there can be certain things that, as we would read an X-ray, we'd read a series of scans, we'd do the HIV, whatever it is, and in terms of our testing, that could be a booth on the corner in a main every corner in the world, if you like, whatever. But it's just a person can walk into that, and the computations could be gathered from the feedback from that human being, and you'd have little probes that come out from the wall and push in this direction or that direction, or suck in this direction or that direction to bring about a physical shift. It's not rocket science to look at the areas of alignment and misalignment, and then create something that can like an activator as a robot can analyze, and it can put in an impulse, right? So so that, yes, it can replace certain things. I would say.
I for me, and
Yep.
the reason I'm surprised is
Yep.
with your understanding and deep-seated, I say belief, and I mean that in the truest sense, knowledge is perhaps better, that delivering an adjustment isn't just about delivering force. It's about the interaction, as you said right near the start, of that human connection and that vibrational energy. And okay, so maybe AI in the example you've described could deliver the force.
Yes.
So and then you could also argue, I suppose, that if you're practicing without that intent and without that heart connection, and you're going through the motions, then it's probably a more accurate way of actually delivering that force, and therefore maybe the outcome's better. However, if you practice with heart, and if you practice understanding that vibrational energy, for me personally, I don't know how AI could replace that. But so that's why I say I'm truly intrigued that you said yes.
Yeah, because I think it can replace, as I said, the hands-on skills, right? It could probably also replace intuition.
That's a very interesting concept.
Wow.
If it's reading that. However,
for me, intuition is a uniquely human thing.
Yeah.
It's naive.
Yeah. Well, it's a vibration. It's a vibration. Who knows? The way it's going, it's like, well, yeah, it could handle those things. I mean, instinct is an emotional gut response, and that's a fear-related thing, and intuition maybe is a sort of a higher mind type thing. But we can read brainwaves. You can read, those patterns, and I'm sure thought patterns and so forth will be part of that AI's access. However, the second part of, answering the first part of the question, yes, and then there's a but, right? So out of that booth then is a door where one goes into an environment filled with the human connection, love, and intimate engagement. And I think it's a sacred connection that we have with our people, that is the human experience, and it's the being that then gets attended to. You see, it's like science can create all sorts of amazing things, but not life. So it's the being, and this is once again the integration that we're so fortunate to be custodians of, not owners of, and not it's not patented, because we all have it, we all do it, in every single level of humanity. But it's that human element, that connection, that allows us to have the healing experience. that the big ahas, the transformations, whilst they do come from a bone out of place that gets back into place, so to speak, to be really crude on it, that is a transformative experience, and that does affect brainwaves and so forth, as Heidi and her team are definitely showing. But it's what about the environment that we've created there? And as we know, environment is a far greater influencer than nature has even created for us. So the nurture that we give transcends the even some of the flaws in DNA or the expressions of maladaptive containers of physical stuff, and allows us to ascend as a human being. So I think it's a partnership. The same question could have come back from the early times of before the motor vehicle or before radio, or there's these things that come along, like Manchester with the spinning jennies, and the Luddites were smashing the equipment because it was taking jobs away. But it's like in the long term that actually moved forward and move society forward. So I'd see that AI is a definite tool that we can use, and we're getting more and more power within that. I think, and within the next 5 years, robots will just be everyone's helper. There's so many jobs that are going to be taken up by robots. I would find it difficult to see or feel a robot having the compassion and the connection and the interhuman components that would satisfy as qualifying as a full adjustment. So does that make sense?
It does make a lot of sense. It's collaborative, and I can only, again, I can only speak from my experience. We've actually recently introduced some AI in our practice, and ironically, the reason that I was keen to introduce it was to improve the doctor-patient interaction, to get you away from a keyboard. And from all reports, that has from the chiropractors, is the cleverness of it is astounding. The ability for everybody to be a little bit more on the same page, but putting the patient back as the center of attention as opposed to you tapping away on a screen. So I can see that there's that, there's a collaboration that can be had, but it's a brave new world, isn't it? It's a brave new world.
It is. It's so exciting though, isn't it? It's just like,
it is exciting if we can still keep that humanity. For me, it's about keeping that humanity around it and using those tools to enhance that. Like I said, we went from paper notes where you could write and still look at someone in the eye to digitizing, where you tend not to, particularly for a dinosaur like me, where you actually have to look at the things you're typing, to now just going back to what we all kind of do naturally, which is talking and actually looking someone in the eye. So it can be used, I suppose, what I'm sort of gleaning from what you're saying, it still can be used in a way that can support our ability to interact with our patients on a human level in a better way.
Yeah. And who's to say that we wouldn't have a reader that would read our thinking and get the appropriate facilities or necessary documents or whatever for the practice member without us even having to speak it, and would write down our notes because it's whatever we can conceive and
I don't
believe.
think there's AI sophisticated enough to actually unscramble my head.
Might be surprised.
maybe in 100 years from now, 200 years from now, maybe less, people will say, do you remember when chiropractors used to be human? Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling really proud to say, my chiropractors are all human. Who knows? Maybe my grandkids won't be able to relate to that. Oh, fascinating. Such an interesting topic.
I know, isn't it? You could You could really continue on that one forever, but I know
Boy,
you tell us not to.
well, it's like, it's like with AI even now in its fundamental form is, it's as good as the questions you ask, right? So
Yeah.
the prompts are critical. But, look at where Tesla's going with this, with automatic, driverless cars and trucks and Ubers and whatever. And, it's not going to be long before we could have, instead of multiple chiros in a practice, have robots that do certain things to people's physiology based on the feedback that we're getting. Like, it doesn't have to be at the local, that booth on the corner, but it could be in your practice where then, what's your role? What's the real, the important part of that adjustment? It's not the bone moving.
It gets back to what we were sort of having a discussion about earlier and Mark, about that whole existential question, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah. And I guess there's a question for you, and I know perhaps, well, I say I know, I would suspect that you reflecting on this question now, where you are in your life, you would say there have been no disappointments in my life because they've all been learning experiences. But at the time, I'm sure they probably didn't feel like that. So, what would you say have been your biggest disappointment, and how do you feel that's shaped who you are?
Oh my gosh!
Oh, is that too big?
No. All right. So, probably, I guess I feel really, there's sort of an interesting introduction to chiropractic for me, in that, I knew I wanted to get into healthcare. I knew I wanted to be able to help people. I, as a kid, 17-year-old in New Zealand, there I went to family doctor, and asked, why do you do what you do? And it was like, well, we just help people. Well, that's cool. Well, for what purpose? I didn't actually use those words because that didn't come to me until later. But, it's like, oh, yeah, okay, fine. Well, there didn't seem to be a bigger why. I went to the dentist, same thing. Went to physio, the same thing. I hadn't heard of chiropractic. So I traveled, went overseas, traveled around the world, hitched around the world, lived in London for a while, so we did sort of OE thing. And met up with a couple of kids in Vancouver, Canada, for a night. They were two boys, and they were students at Chiropractic College in Iowa. And we went down to Gastown, and they talked about this thing called chiropractic. And right then, I knew it. It's just like, that's me. That's got my name all over it. So it was like, okay, so what do I have to do in order to become a chiropractor? Well, I found out guys couldn't just hitchhike back down to Iowa. I had to go back to New Zealand and get the authority from the recommendation from the association and so forth. And I had, when I arrived back in New Zealand, I had $4, and so I went down and picked apples to get on a ship to go across to Perth, because I knew I could earn money over in the mine, so they'd told me. And so I mean, it was like, there was a knockback after knockback. It wasn't just like an easy thing to do, but the burning thing within me all the time was, if I can just help one person, this is my mantra, if I could just help one person, I didn't even know what this thing was. I hadn't been to a chiropractor, I'd never seen one, but it resonated. So if I could just help one person, then it's going to be all worthwhile. 18 months later, I got to Palma, traveling by ship, and met Jackie along the way, and we communication was very slow in those days. You write a letter and, go 3 weeks to get there and 3 weeks to get back, sort of thing. And send cassette tapes to each other and so forth. But, it was one of those things that it could have been as disappointment, I suppose, because it was like, who's going to wait that long to even find out what this thing is that you're so hot about, because you haven't even been to a chiropractor. But I knew I didn't even need to go to a chiropractor, because that chiropractic is not about what you do, it's who you are. And so I felt, well, that's a fit for me. And so, so I think it was probably that training of sort of a deprived achievement. I wasn't able to be satisfied immediately. It's a delayed gratification that this is worth doing because if I can help one person, it's all been worthwhile. All this hitching across the Nullarbor and sleeping under bridges and doing all I had to do to get this degree. To then go out and do what I felt like I was destined to do. So, yeah, it was quite fascinating. I was probably third month in chiropractic college before I got my first adjustment. Yeah, it was in a funny sort of way. It was like a big disappointment that I couldn't just whip up to Palmer and start. Then I had to wait for 18 months to get there. But it was all well worth it to do that.
Just for me, reflecting on what you've said, that sums up so much of what you do, that your journey started with your purpose as opposed to, and finding something that could fulfill your why and your purpose, as opposed to finding something that you connected with and then finding the purpose behind that. I find that that's a really interesting shift, and it probably does, in my opinion, and knowing the little bits I do about you and your career, is probably explains why it has unfolded the way it has, because the why is the purpose. The purpose is the why.
Yeah, very much so. And in a practical sense, it's like, if you do a healthcare class for your practice members, then if one person shows up, that's fine. I mean, even if no one shows up, it's fine, because then you get a chance to practice what you were going to do. You still do it, but you get to do it, but there's no one in immediate earshot. I mean, so I think probably, having that atmosphere, that attitude is really useful, because we're, in a state of grace, or a state of being blessed by having what we're able to give and freely giving it. And, it's like so hard for a new grad, for example, when they've got a big debt and they need to see people to make money to, survive. And as a person who's been around for a while, then you don't need to practice. I don't need to go to practice at all. But you do it out of that attitude of abundance. And so it's not work. It's just play. You're just expressing yourself, and people flock to you. So if that can, this is something we work with our associates on, is to say, reframe this so that you're acting out of your abundance immediately, even though the bank account says, well, actually you're in the red here. But when we can, in certain neurological ways, we can do that. So that this is, I guess, the process of taking calamity, or taking bad turns, or disappointments and so forth, and turn them very quickly by reframing them to bring them out as a plus, rather than as a as a negative. I think it's been very useful for me, and I think it's allowed me to achieve lots of stuff, but not for the purpose of achieving it. It's the process of it. It's like our practice members, it's not the holy moment is not when their asthma stops, or their back pain disappears, or their menstrual cramps stop, whatever. It's like, it's the process of that journey that we're given, and this opportunity we have to go through this journey with these people, and learn about different perspectives. So it's, I think as long as we continue to push that curiosity, then we continue to grow. And as soon as we start to get defensive about things, or self-aggrandize, or sort of count the gains, we start to shrink.
I was very fortunate back when I was training, we still had to do sort of 6 months residency program, as I'm sure you're aware. And I was very fortunate to do some of my experience with a pretty well-known chiropractor in Perth, and very, very busy. And I remember he sat me down on day one, and he said, "You do what you do because you love it, and the rest will follow."
Yep.
I have carried that with me, and through those times when you do because we all do, because we're human, get
Mm.
swayed sometimes by the, as you say, by the bank account or the stress and the struggles and the this and the that. And you have to remind yourself that do what you do because you love it, and the rest will follow. And it frees you from that the constraint of need, I think, allows you and your spirit to be a little freer, and that does attract things, doesn't it?
Yeah,
And
it's attractive.
yeah, absolutely. So, Mark, what's your biggest dream that you'd still yet to achieve?
I don't know. I mean, it's like I'd love to see what happens with this AI thing and robots and decentralized networks. I think this is actually a really great opportunity for us as chiros. We know that supply chains are. We saw this, particularly during COVID, but supply chains of centralized models like centralized government, centralized medical systems and authority systems, things like that. In these days of technology, where, speed of light is a form of transport, where we don't need to have a lot of the stuff now. It's really interesting, actually. Just once again from Africa, it has one of the highest uptakes of crypto in the world. And it's they don't have the infrastructure there. Like there's power lines and stuff are not crisscrossing everywhere. There's more local generation of electricity, if at all. But they can bounce off satellites. They don't have to be on the grid for their internet or whatever. Just about everyone seems to have a cell phone, even the smallest of impoverished villages. I was watching a lady with a baby side of the road begging. She had a cell phone. She was on her phone. That was just the other day in Banbury. There's a huge, a rapid change that we're in, exponential change. And so everything, all systems are having to be redesigned and, from the ground up. And with that comes huge upset. And, you guys are seeing this in the UK. We're seeing it in Australia too. There's America's seeing it. There's existing systems are being challenged, and we're going through maybe the equivalent to the fall of the Roman Empire. This empires never last. They break down with under their own weight, and they change. And I think we're really fortunate to be at a time and a place where all this is happening before our eyes. And so how do we work with it? How do we capitalize on it? What is money? What is exchange? And as chiros, once again, we're so blessed that we don't need money with our exchange with our people. There's other forms of exchange. There's that we can engage in, and I've been through several times when the finances in the world were very shaky, and with recessions and so forth. And we've practiced regardless of that with people. Maybe they bring in a cabbage or two for in exchange, or I can do this for you, and we get by with that. There was that flexibility of serving, and when you serve in bad times, then you're looked after in good times. But you don't serve in bad times so you get looked after in good times either. It's you serve out of your own abundance or the abundance of the universe. So I think, there's so many opportunities right now for us to go to the next level of humankind. And, sometimes it takes a period of human hostility before we embrace the next chapter of humankind. So let's see. Watch the space.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mark. Just a couple of quick fire questions before we wrap this up. Something I wanted to ask you was if there was just one thing that you think every chiropractor should know, what would that be, in your opinion?
I am enough.
I like that. Good
I like
answer.
that feeling.
Another kind of quick question is, how would you or do you explain chiropractic to a 5-year-old?
Okay, 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Your superpower is within you. When it gets blocked, the chiro adjusts you. Then you can do super things.
Excellent.
I hope that's not just limited to 5-year-olds, Mark.
Absolutely no. Across the
Very
board.
good point, Kerry.
I'm going to go and put my pants on the outside of my trousers.
A question for both of you, actually, that I've been wanting to ask you is, when I film my next podcast, whenever that may be, who would you like to see as a guest? Who is someone you'd like to listen to, in our world?
There's
And
so
do you
many
have
people.
their email so I can contact them?
Absolutely.
Oh,
I mean,
somebody realistic. Okay.
Oh, no. I mean, anyone.
Oh, honestly, I mean, every
Hmm.
chiro has their story. You know, it's so heartwarming to listen to a person's journey. You know, there's touch points
Yeah.
of cognition there. I obviously people who've been laying down new tracks, and Bruce Lipton obviously is a good friend. He's also it's an amazing man who loves to share and exemplifies the rhetoric, the story that he relates. He lives it. I don't know. Have you had Bruce on before? No, we'll just.
Not yet.
One. Yep. Okay. I'm sure he'd be very happy to. And I mean, Joe Dispenza is another person who's a chiropractor, and he's amazing. I don't know whether have you had him on?
Not yet, but great suggestions. And I'm
Okay.
always curious to know who people want to hear. So anyone listening today, if you've got any suggestions of someone that we haven't yet spoken to, please, get in touch, and hopefully I can get that arranged.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, and my final question, Mark, is to finish this sentence, please. Chiropractic is
An idea whose time has come.
wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Mark. And thank you, Kerry, as well. It's been a really fascinating episode, this one. The time's just absolutely flown by, and I've really enjoyed it.
I'm sure that everybody who's listening was probably sitting there going, oh, what about this and what about that? Because Mark is a font of knowledge and experience, and
yes.
He walks the walk. He doesn't just talk the talk, in my experience. So, it could go on. So
yeah, I know. It's been a pleasure to be here with you guys, and thank you so much. And every now and then drop up to the UK, so we'll be there, let's see, in February.
Good.
A little workshop or two. I haven't quite figured out where or how, whatever, but late in February. And then there's a ski event over in Austria in Solden in 21st or 28th of February too, if people like to ski and like to unpack all that because how you do your skiing is how you do your life. So and how you do your practice.
Does that mean that your learnings on the golf course, which I am led to believe by a reliable source that Wednesdays are sacrosanct? What you learn on the golf course, you bring to life. So anybody who wants to join you in Solden can learn on the ski slopes. They can bring to life.
Absolutely. Well, we could squeeze in a golf one too if we want. Yeah.
Golf in the snow, I think you'd need.
That's very telling. Well, maybe in a separate location.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for joining us. And stay tuned, listeners, for our next podcast that will be out very soon. Thank you so much.
Lovely. Thanks, Holly.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Let's Talk UCA. Your feedback will help us deliver new topics and guests for future episodes. The bios of the interviewee and co-hosts, along with our contact links, are included in the show notes below. Thank you for listening.